But it's been around a long time.
So much for new words for new things. Crank, then, dates back to the very dawn of the English language. A very old new word. But even as far back as the 9th century, as Dennis Smith showed, crank was itself once a new word. I suppose there's a tendency in this age of so much novelty, of fashion and innovation, of research and discovery, perhaps unparalleled in human history, to believe that making up new words for things and ideas is in itself something new. But as we've just seen, all ages have had their full complement of new words, and in fact, many things that we now think of as exclusively 20th century were named well before the last century began. Contact lens dates from 1888, for example. Parachute was coined way back in 1785, and even commuters were making their daily journey as early as 1865. The official term for this business of linguistic creation is coining words. New words are called coinages, and it goes on all the time, naming new things, renaming old things, borrowing words from other languages, from one field of endeavour into another, slamming bits of different existing words together to create a new whole, or adapting existing words by adding new prefixes and suffixes to forge a fresh term. So what's the shock of the new? We watch or listen to the news, we ask, what news on the Rialto? And old advertising wisdom tells us that there's no more powerful word in the trade than new. So maybe it's not surprising that linguistic novelty also holds a peculiar power.
That is the thing, of all things, that people really want to know about dictionaries. Even a major historical dictionary, one of the first questions people will ask is, what are the new words? And I think that is one of the ways in which people perceive and measure language change.
Elizabeth Knowles is a lexicographer at the Oxford University Press. She edited the Oxford Dictionary of New Words.
It's a thing that people can recognise, and actually it's quite a sensible way to do it, if you allow for new words covering not just the new coinage, the completely newly minted word, but the change of meaning, the change of emphasis. Sometimes a coinage will in fact name something which has been there before, but which has not been named in quite that way, and people suddenly say, my goodness, yes, spin doctoring was an example of that. What perhaps would have been called propaganda in the past was very, very familiar. But this image of doctoring the spin on a ball so that you could direct the way it went, as soon as that coinage occurred, I think people felt, yes, that is exactly what happens.
We'll be looking at more modern coinages later in the programme, as well as investigating some of the interesting naming processes that took place during the great industrial and scientific age. But because those two periods were so rich in new words, it's easy to forget that back at the beginning of English, 1,000 and more years ago, along with their mill cranks, Anglo-Saxons still wanted to name new things and ideas. Dr. Katie Lowe is an Old English specialist at Glasgow University.
I think it's the introduction of new concepts. I mean, if you take the introduction of Christianity in Anglo-Saxon England, here the Anglo-Saxons are faced with a choice, aren't they? They can either choose to simply borrow the words from Latin into English,